Alright, I'm going to give you guys a little demo in texturing in Photoshop. And Photoshop is pretty dope to texture in as long as you use it in the way it's sort of intended and sort of the way that it works. Um, it's not like texturing inside of Mari or texturing inside of ZBrush, which would be great. If it operated like ZBrush, you could rotate around in Polypaint. If you could paint like that in Photoshop, that'd be fantastic. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but that does not make um, Photoshop useless when it comes to texturing and looking at the object in 3D. So let's go ahead and open up our OBJ. It'll detect any linked maps that are already on it. So you can see that, let's go into move mode, or rather use our little guy right here. You'll see that it's already linked up our normal map, so we can see our normals on the surface. We can preview that. But let's look at over some basic 3D navigation. So at the top here, while we have this active, the move tool, we have free rotation, rotation on the Z, or the camera axis actually, camera Z. And then we have pan and zoom in and out. All right. So these controls are not incredibly sexy. Like they don't move very well. So it makes working in it like you would inside of ZBrush when you texture inside of ZBrush very, very difficult. Instead, what you can do is you can pop open your individual maps, and mine still needs quite a bit of cleanup on my normal map, but you can use the layer properties. The maps are already in there, and you can double click on it to open it up, and we're going to work in it in this way. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my diffuse map, and I'm going to go ahead and fill it with gray. If I bounce back over to my OBJ, you'll see that it automatically updates when I update one of the maps. So it's a little difficult to paint in the map looking at it like this, so we need some sort of reference for where our UVs are sitting. So I'm going to take this, my normal map, I'm going to copy that, I'm going to go ahead and paste it over into my diffuse map, and if I go over here now, you'll see our normals. You should see the normal map updated on here. Maybe I have to save it out. Oh, there we go. It's had a little pop-up. Alright, so right now I'm seeing my normals on here. But I'm going to go ahead and desaturate this. So let's take the saturation down. Let's go ahead and convert this over to multiply, and I'm going to drop the opacity a little bit just so we can see where things are laying. So let's zoom in here, and I'm just going to start dropping some feathers in. So I already have a feather inside of my clipboard. I'm going to paste that in. And actually, you know what? Let's not go that small right away, because I want to create a transparency on here that I will only be able to get nice edges if I have it nice and large like that. So quick selection tool. Let's drag across this area. There we go. Let's hit delete. And now let's scale that down. And actually, I'm going to make a duplicate and scale it down. Let's hide the original. Alright, let's bring this into place. I'll start out with the larger feathers. flip this guy. There we go. A little bit of warp. Set it just like that. One problem though is that we want this on top at all times. And let's bring up the opacity a little bit so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to lower the opacity on this guy so I can see what I need to do more clearly. So I'm going to erase the end here. And let's go over to, where are you, Mr. Nudge? Not the smudge. And the smudge could work, but it's not what I want to work with. So actually, let me get these in straight first, and then I'll start warping them around. Let's move it behind our guide. You could also take a UV snapshot and use it in the same way. That would work just as fine too. And in some ways, it might even be a little bit better because you could see how the wireframe is laying out in the UVs. So let's scale this guy down, and we're just going to place these first before we start warping them around. So I'll start with these big guys. My feathers are much skinnier than this, so I probably have the wrong feather here. So maybe these guys will work better here. I know I'm gonna not want those ends. Scale it down even further. Control and Alt or Command and Alt. This guy's a little too thick. So if we want to see how this is looking on the model, you just bounce over to our 3D view. And I got a lot of feathers to place. So let's take a look at what we have over here. And you know, the default lighting isn't necessarily the best inside of Photoshop. And there we can see our color being laid out. And to adjust our 3D environment, let's go over to the 3D tab, click on Environment, and we have IBL for colors, so we can brighten this up, make it more intense, or we can load up an HDR in here. But I found that loading up an HDR inside of Photoshop, it just reflects way too much, and it interferes with actually seeing the color on the surface. Now, if you have a specific environment that you know your character is going into, it could be helpful. But I found it fairly distracting for the most part. You also have control over shadows, whether they're on or off, and also the softness of the shadows. And this is more shadows that are being cast onto the object rather than, or one object casting onto another object rather than these ground shadows. You do have ground plane controls. You can apply background, or you can set your IBL as background if you have them loaded up. So that's just a little bit of the environment controls. Let's go back over to our layers, and we'll keep focused on this one area. You know, and one way to work, if you have a dual screen monitor, you can keep the 3D view up, this tab up, in another panel. You can throw it up on another monitor and put them side by side. You can also undock it just like this, and we'll undock this guy. Let's see if we can't get them side by side. Might not want to do it. Let's just go ahead and dock these back up. I'll keep them docked for now. But dual screen monitor works. I thought maybe it might work with a single screen, but I kept on wanting to hide it. So let's come back over here. Continue to duplicate. Wrong layer. There we go. Let's do it in one layer. So I just selected all. Might as well start adjusting in. Now, depending on how natural I would want to go, I'd want to vary the colors between these feathers slightly so it doesn't look quite so consistent that I'm using the same feather over and over again. Now, what's great about this over Polypaint, and you might not be seeing it right now, but it's actually getting much better detail than Polypaint could. And I say that, there we go, it's starting to fill in nicely. I say that because you're writing directly to a map, so you're only really controlled by your pixel resolution. Right. So I need to go through and continue painting out everything here. Everything else is the same process. It does help if you have a Polypaint, like a Polypaint rough to start with, and then you go in and you start adding this in, because then what you can do is you can come in here and you can start playing with opacity. So I'm doing fairly minute strokes right now. And what if you don't have a Polypaint layer to work with? Well, you know, I'm just going to sample some color here. And actually, let me start with a darker color. Switch back over to the brush here. Let's just do a nice broad stroke right here. Actually, I don't want to do it on my same feather layer. Probably don't want to do it at 100% opacity either. I definitely don't want to do it with a hard edge brush. There we go. So let's start with a new layer. For some reason on the Mac side, my shortcuts not been working right. Anyways, let's just go ahead and do a little bit of broad stroke work here. And this is sort of stuff you can do inside of PolyPaint first and then bring it in. So I'll start out with some relatively dark feathers there. And I'll just pull from the feathers that I have. You know, maybe I do 100% opacity. It's starting to get annoying. There we go. Now, mind you, I'm not the world's greatest texture artist, so I'm just showing you technique, or I'm sorry, I'm showing you some technical pointers. You want to talk to a full-blown texture artist for a little bit more, but this is enough to kind of get you started. And the same thing is going to be with Substance Painter and Substance Designer and Mari. I'm going to be able to give you sort of a good place to start, but there's a lot more to learn than what I'm going to be able to show you in class. And I don't want to insult anybody by going, this is it. Right. So let's go ahead now and clean up. I'm going with the eraser. I don't necessarily have to clean up. It's not gonna cause me any pain to leave this fuzzy around the edges, except when someone looks at my maps and goes, "Oh, that looks sloppy." But let's take a look at that wing right now. Alright, so we're covering some decent ground now. Let's pan across that. Cool. Let's go back over here and let's drop this behind our feathers. Take another look. So that active update in 3D is really, really helpful in being able to see how the paint lays across. So I just want to push a major point here, and the benefit of doing this, of painting inside of Photoshop. And that's the fact that you're writing directly to a map. That means depending on your map size, and I can even come in right now and update my map size. Let's go to image size. And right now it should be, let's see, it's 1024 by 1024. Let's make it 2096. Let's go 2048. 2048. Sure, I'm blowing out the existing pixels, but just for comparison, let's take that. That's why I kept the large feather, and scale that down. Oops, I'm going to duplicate it. Always want to keep that original large one when I know that I'm going to keep on duplicating these around. Alright. Let's erase this end here. Not going to need that. Alright, now let's take it down. And let's look at a side-by-side comparison. So instead of the geometry dictating how much detail, like in ZBrush, it's geometry that dictates dictates how much detail can be held, or color detail can be held, is dictated by the face resolution. This is dictated by the pixel resolution. Let's pull that up. I'm holding down the command key to warp the corner there. And then let's duplicate that. As you can see, it's already sharper. And let's see it on the model and see what a difference it makes. That's a pretty big difference, right, between 1024 over here and 2048. So hopefully this is enough to get you guys going. I'm going to go through and texture out the rest of my bird. And before I do that, I'm going to show you how to bring this into Marmoset. So before I bring this into Marmoset, I'm going to just pretend like everything is textured right now. I'm going to go ahead and export this. So I'm going to go to 3D, export 3D layer, and I'm going to go ahead and create a folder on my desktop. That's going to say to Marmoset. Alright. Then I'm going to change it from a DAE file over to an OBJ. There we go. Save that out. And I'm going to get this little pop-up. So this pop-up is asking me if I want to change my file, my map types. I think it'd be the original file formats, or I'm going to go with PSD or JPEG. I'm going to go JPEG. And I'm going to say OK. Alright, and now if I go to my desktop, we go to the Marmoset folder. There I have the map for my eyes, my normal map, and my diffuse map. And this is what I'm going to need to go into Marmoset. Additionally, and I want to show this to you guys. Let's go into our 3D. Oops, sorry. Got to select the layer, then go over to 3D, and then go over to the shader. And you can also apply a roughness map, reflection map, a shininess map, and you're able to paint these out inside of here too. Alright, I can answer any questions you guys have during our live session or during a crit session on this. So if you have questions, bring them so we can talk about them. Alright, so now I'm going to go into Marmoset.